Morning, y'all.
All right.
Morning.
Instead of Dr. Doolittle, I think with all my foster kittens that I'm currently taking care of, you should probably call me Reverend Little Doo-Doos. Because boy, I mean to tell you, I'm running all the time. And I have a happy joke. It's a tiny bit off color, but I think you'll get a kick out of it. Very old. There was the first day of school, and the teacher was asking what the names of the students were. And so the first little boy said Johnny, and the second boy said I'm Tommy, and the third little girl, I'm Sarah, and fourth little girl says, my name is Happy Butt. And the teacher says, excuse me? And she says, my name is Happy Butt. She says, you know what, if you are going to give me that kind of attitude, I'm going to take you to the principal's office. I demand that you tell me your first name right now, or we're going to march down there. What is your first name? And she says, I'm telling you, it is Happy Butt. She says, come with me, we're going to the principal. They went to the principal, they called the mother. And the teacher got off the phone and looked in the eyes of the little girl, and she says, sweetheart, your mother tells me that your name is Gladys. She says, Gladys, Happy Butt, what's the difference? Old joke, but cute, I think. You know, last Sunday we were having lunch, and there was a soccer game. You know, we went to Mariscos, and there was a soccer game on, and lately Spirit has been giving me these amazing metaphors. I mean, just knock me down kind of stuff. And there was a soccer game on, and all of a sudden I saw it differently. It's like, you know, that ball is God. There's all these people chasing the ball with all these outsiders watching how it plays out. And I thought, you know, there's a great deal of truth in that there's lots of us who are on the path, but some of us are pushing harder, chasing harder, working harder in pursuit of knowing themselves at a deeper level. And so the others are like waiting to see what's the temperature of the water? Can we come in and swim? And so I thought that was something to think about for the next 20, 30 years. But anyway, when I looked at the phrases for this month, it looked like an algebraic equation to me, x plus y equals z. Conscious communion with God creates a shifting of consciousness leading to spiritual transformation. Have you ever walked down a beautiful tree-lined path or street and you felt the cool air on your face, and you stopped to listen to the silence, and you heard the wind rustling through the leaves, and perhaps it was fall and you could see the beautiful colored leaves blowing down the street and collecting in piles, and kids running and jumping, and you were just present for a moment, and you knew that God was present. It was, for me, it's like I'm in the middle of a cathedral when I'm in those kinds of moments. Or I stop when there's a thunderstorm and I listen to the sound of the water pounding on the ground, and I listen to my wind chimes, how different they are, because the rain is blowing and the wind is blowing in a way that the wind chimes don't usually sing. And I smell the negative ions that are in the air that has such a quality of clean when the rain is falling and replenishing our air with negative ions. And those, for me, are direct communion, what I call direct communions with God for myself. But it's not so much that I need to find God, it's that I need to turn my head off so that I can hear God. A few weeks ago, I was watching a Netflix show, an old medieval, set in medieval times, and it occurred to me that what religion was like 600 or 700 years ago, with their intolerance, their judgmentalness, and their fear that there was something outside of them called Satan that was going to force them to do things beyond their control that would lead to, thank you Dante's Inferno very much, that it would lead to this ghastly eternity of being in a place called hell. And how different our evolution, as we have moved through our spiritual evolution, has brought us here where God's not mad at us anymore. And we don't have this boogeyman under the bed that's just waiting to trip us and force us to do things which then will take away our happiness for eternity. It is just such an amazing, it's almost like traveling in time sometimes when I watch those programs. It helps me to have a check on where I'm at right now in my spirituality and evolution, and where I see us as a global family in how we're taking care of the planet. Of course, back in those days, you know, when Galileo finally decided that the earth was round, and of course they put him in prison because what a blasphemous idea that was. And to think of how much we've evolved to where we can come together without fear of stepping out that door and being burned at the stake, you know, for being a witch or whatever it was at the time. But many of us today still believe that we're doomed. You know, they're worried about the situation in this country. We're worried about the presidential election. We're worried about the condition of the oceans. We're worried about global warming, and we're worried about the trees that are dead that are around here. And I thought it was interesting because how the ego plays us is that my clients have been coming in lately, and now that summer's come to an end, and we are so very grateful that this fire season has been gentle for us. Now they're worried about the snow dropping those trees this coming winter. So everything we see outside of ourselves is a reflection on what needs healing within. And this is, I'm speaking to myself when I say this, because these are my reflections about what I see. Spirit said, A Course in Miracles says that people come into our lives as spiritual teachers to remind us of where we still need healing. Anything that we are triggered by points to something within our hearts and our souls that need healing. So what is our relationship to God? Do you see him as a beloved, that you are the prodigal son and anything and everything you do is okay with God, no matter what, how bad you fall down and skin your knees? No matter what happens, it's okay? Because perhaps somebody said years ago that when we're on the other side and we're planning this lifetime, that we are exactly where we plan to be. And that gives me great comfort when I am thinking about, why am I here again? Or do you think in terms of God being a punishing? Do you still have some old conditioning and stuff that still needs to be weeded out and re-embrace God as a loving source, a father that loves you absolutely no matter what happens in your life? And that those particular paths that perhaps you're not particularly fond of have guided you here into this place of thinking? That's what's important. So sometimes in the last couple of weeks I've had some very, very dark images coming through. And and rather than Sandy, I talked with Sandy about it last night, but that I can create a healing pillar outside of me in my imagination, and I can send those images into that pillar to be cleansed and reformulated and sent back as positive energy. I'll just throw them in the wash, going forward. I don't have to have a negative reaction. It's like, why am I thinking those kind of dark thoughts? It's like they're just thoughts passing through, and I can just throw them in the wash like an old pair of tennis shoes I need to get whitened up. But our awakening to the shadow, there is no question, because of our belief system in this planet, we have a shadow side. The thing is that those of us, one of the metaphors that Spirit gave me this morning, whoops, excuse me. Let me turn that off. That was good, yeah. They showed me a light bulb, and when you dip it in mud. And so the mud is our old thinking and our old concepts and our conditioning from our parents and whatnot. And slowly, as we walk our paths, we slowly wash that mud off. And to the point where every time we screw it in, the light's a little bit brighter than it was the last time before we washed it. And what happens then is, as we wash, which we call enlightenment, which I didn't expect that, but the light of our light bulb begins to get brighter. And what happens then is our friends see that our light is brighter, and they're like, well, how is it that your light is brighter? And it's like, well, I took a washcloth to my light bulb, and this is what I did. And I can sell you my washcloth, or you can go down to the thrift store and get your own, but we just have to wash them off. And so our light gets brighter and brighter, and so our friends come, their lights get brighter and brighter because perhaps they liked what we said, they liked what we read, they started meditating, or whatever it was that they saw in us that they wanted to complement their lives with. And what happens is it becomes tenfold. Then their 10 friends create that. They go starting to wash their light bulbs, and so on and so forth. And all of a sudden, then we are a huge spotlight in the world that people are saying, what is it that they're doing because their lives are happier than mine? What can I go to their meeting place and find out what tools that they're using in order to help themselves feel better? Because there's no question that what happens on this planet is challenging. And another metaphor that Spirit gave me just recently, which was dumbfounding for me, is that because a lot of my healing has come up through Al-Anon, which is for friends and families of alcoholics. And I've been struggling with an eating disorder since I was about 16 years old. And so Spirit said, what you don't realize is that people who have had alcoholism, drug addiction, eating disorders, or in relationship to people who have addictions, you do not realize what a great, capital G-R-E-A-T, blessing that is. And I have always thought that alcoholism and its suffering were terrible, terrible. There's just terrible suffering in it, and it did not appear positive to me at all. But what Spirit has showed me is that it is like having jet fuel for your car. It is an accelerated opportunity for you to grow in your evolution in such a way, because what it's like is that you are a block of carbon, and it, under great pressure of life experience, puts you in a position, I don't know about you, but for me, I got really tired of struggling with those kind of attitudes. So I became willing to do whatever it took to feel better. So it promoted my path like I had jet engines on my tail, and off I went. And so the thing is that's mind-boggling is that when I was in early days of Al-Anon, they told me that only 1 out of 80 people came into the doors of Al-Anon for help. And I wonder, and I knew many, many people who would do so much healing work and then stop. And I wonder how many have gone on to do healing. But I feel just seeing this room full, and I know that a lot of us have those issues or have had in the past, that what we've done is we've created a different kind of culture, a healing culture that we're passing on to our children and our grandchildren. The other day I was watching a show, and there was a comment about insanity being, doing the same thing the same way over and over, but always expecting different results. Well, back in the 80s, the only place I ever heard that was in meetings. But now it's becoming mainstream communication. You're hearing it in movies. And I think that's from God's grace, because the message needs to get out that we are the beloved prodigal sons of God. There was another, when we surrender because of our direct communication, our communion to God, there is that old saying about you step up to the edge of all you know, and there's nothing in front of you but the great black abyss. And when you take the next step, there will either be a step or you'll be taught how to fly. And that is grace. That is, we can count on the